Get that relic off my runway. I asked for jets, not flying antiques. The colonel growled, but she didn't flinch. She didn't ask for clearance. She just climbed into the cockpit and took off, alone. Because out in the field, 12 soldiers were running out of time, and every command post in range had gone silent. She wasn't on the roster. She wasn't cleared for takeoff, and yet she flew. When 12 soldiers begged for help, a voice cut through the static. I see you, hold your ground. No orders, no clearance. Just one rule. Never let them die waiting. She wasn't supposed to be part of the story, but she rewrote the ending. She is Valkyrie 7. The war room buzzed like a hornet's nest. Digital maps glowed red across every screen, pulsing with shifting front lines and threat markers. Officers stood shoulder to shoulder around the central tactical display, each face reflecting not only urgency, but failure. The situation in Sector J11 had collapsed faster than anticipated. 12 soldiers, call sign Alpha Tango 3, were pinned down in a ravine with no cover and dwindling ammo. Enemy artillery had triangulated their position, and reinforcements were delayed. The skies, choked with electromagnetic jamming, GPS and targeting drones were blind. Colonel Nathan Kellerman stood at the head of the room, stiff-backed and square-jawed, the kind of leader carved from tradition and military protocol. His hand slammed onto the table hard enough to silence the room. Just get me jets, he barked. I don't care what it is. F-35, F-16, Raptors. I need something that flies and fires in the next 10 minutes. A comms officer looked down nervously. Sir, F-18s are mid-refuel. The F-35s are grounded for avionics calibration. No one can reach the zone that fast. Kellerman's glare could have pierced armor. Then find someone who can. Silence. Until a soft, almost reluctant voice rose from the back of the room. It belonged to Lieutenant Marcus Dyer, a junior logistics officer. Not the kind of person anyone listened to, until now. There's one aircraft prepped, sir. A-10C Warthog, unassigned, but the pilot's already sitting hot, ready for tasking. Heads turned. Even the radar tech raised an eyebrow. Kellerman whipped around, disbelief clear in his voice. An A-10? Dyer nodded. Yes, sir. Pilot reports full fuel. Armed, ready. Call sign Valkyrie 7. The colonel scoffed. A Warthog? That relic? I said jets, not flying antiques. We need altitude, speed, precision, not a tank with wings. A ripple of suppressed reactions moved through the room. Some of the older officers knew better than to mock the A-10, but this wasn't the time to argue with a rattled colonel. Kellerman continued, voice hardening. Get that thing off my tarmac. The last thing I need is some museum piece buzzing over a hot zone. But then, boom! A distant vibration rippled through the floor, followed by a low guttural roar, one that every soldier, mechanic, and technician on base recognized. The GAU-8 Avenger hadn't fired yet, but its engine had woken up. The room paused. Radios crackled. A radar tech's voice broke the stillness. Sir, aircraft just lifted off without clearance. Confirming ID, it's the A-10. Kellerman snapped toward the screen. What do you mean lifted off? Who gave the order? The reply was slow. No one, sir. Now a tension settled that no amount of rank could disperse. A new voice came from comms. Unidentified A-10 en route to J11. Flying low, radar silent, no transponder. Dyer checked his screen again. Call sign still registering as Valkyrie 7. Kellerman's hand clenched into a fist. Who is this damn pilot? No one answered, because the name hadn't been spoken in years, and no one wanted to say it aloud just yet. Not until they were sure it was really her. Outside the war room windows, airmen stared into the sky, watching the gray beast rise with a slow climb, wings heavy with experience, not reputation. Somewhere far ahead, on the ground, 12 soldiers were screaming into broken radios, asking if anyone could hear them. And someone had. There was no clearance, no call sign logged, no tower authorization, just the whine of turbines spooling up, too early, too sudden, followed by the unmistakable growl of a warthog waking from slumber. Valkyrie 7 didn't wait for permission. She launched while the control tower was still debating who was even available. The officer in charge of flight traffic blinked at his console. Runway 3 is live. I repeat, aircraft is rolling. What the hell? By the time he reached for the mic, it was already too late. A gray, battle-worn A-10 Thunderbolt II powered down the tarmac, its twin engines roaring low like thunder crawling over metal. Then it lifted, effortlessly, like it had done it 1,000 times in silence. Because it had. Inside the command center, alarms chirped. Red lights blinked to life. Radar operators scrambled to recalibrate tracking. Colonel Nathan Kellerman turned just as the technician at the radar station shouted, "Unidentified aircraft just departed. No flight number. No clearance code." "What aircraft?" Kellerman snapped. "A-10, sir, from auxiliary line." "That warthog was grounded." The technician frowned at his screen. "Not anymore." "Get them on comms." The radio crackled. "Tower to A-10 in outbound pattern. Identify immediately. You are not cleared for takeoff. Respond or return to base." Static. Another attempt on an encrypted channel. "This is command. Valkyrie 7, if you are receiving, break radio silence and return to the field." Still, nothing. All eyes in the room slowly shifted to Kellerman. He walked toward the main tactical display, where the aircraft's path had begun drawing itself. A low, sweeping arc following the terrain toward Grid J11, where 12 infantry soldiers were still fighting to survive. Altitude, 300 feet and dropping. "She's flying nap of the earth," someone muttered. "She's using the mountains to mask her approach," another said, voice tinged with both awe and concern. "That's a strike profile," Kellerman said almost to himself. "Low and aggressive. But why the silence?" The answer came not from inside the base, but from the battlefield. In the muddy ravine where Alpha Tango 3 was pinned down, the air had grown thick with smoke and dust. Every second felt like a countdown, and the countdown was almost up. Radio interference buzzed like angry insects in every headset. The squad's field radio was nearly dead, battery blinking red, signal barely holding. Sergeant David Klein pressed the mic with trembling hands. Any station. This is Alpha Tango 3. We are taking sustained fire. Zero air support. I repeat, we are outnumbered. Requesting immediate assistance." And then, for the first time in what felt like forever, the static split cleanly. A woman's voice cut through like sunlight. "Alpha Tango 3. This is Valkyrie 7. I see you. Hold your ground." Back at the command center, that same voice echoed through the speaker systems. The room went dead silent. Even the technicians froze. Colonel Kellerman leaned forward, his mouth tightening. "Repeat transmission. Who is Valkyrie 7? The room held its breath. "Get her on an open line," Kellerman ordered. "Right now." Seconds passed before her voice returned. Steady, calm, like it was pulled from the very marrow of discipline. "I see your position. I am engaging the threat. Hold your fire. Strike incoming." "You're not authorized," Kellerman shouted into the comms mic. "This is a violation of direct orders." The reply didn't come immediately. When it did, it felt like a knife of truth sliding between decades of military noise. "Colonel, I waited once, and they didn't survive long enough to thank me." That was all. No more words, no acknowledgement, no signature sign-off. She was already descending. The A-10's approach path didn't follow protocol. It followed instinct. She skimmed the ridge, cutting through pockets of fog and low-hanging smoke with perfect control. No automated lock-on systems. No laser designation. Just her. Just eyes trained from years of hard-earned experience. She didn't fly like someone who was told what to do. She flew like someone who knew what needed to be done. At the ravine, the soldiers of Alpha Tango 3 looked up. Sergeant Klein dropped his rifle for just a second and whispered to himself, That's a warthog." Then came the sound. Brrrt. The GAU-8 Avenger tore the sky open. 3 short bursts, 3 perfect strikes. The enemy artillery positions, dug into hillsides and shielded by camouflage netting, erupted in fire and debris. The squad watched in disbelief as the shelling stopped. In the base, Kellerman stared at the radar screen. The A-10 didn't linger. She didn't circle for applause. She just curved west, out of radar range, and disappeared into the folds of the mountains like smoke slipping through fingers. Someone finally asked what they were all thinking. Who the hell is Valkyrie 7? The technician pulled up the archived call sign, paused, and whispered, She's not on the active roster, sir. That designation was retired 3 years ago. But if she was a ghost, she was the kind that didn't haunt. She answered, when no one else did. Sector J11 was a graveyard waiting to happen. The ravine where Alpha Tango 3 had taken shelter was collapsing under pressure. Enemy artillery had bracketed the position, and each explosion came closer, walking its way inward like a heartbeat of doom. 12 soldiers, mud-caked, low on ammo, cut off from all air support, huddled in shallow craters and behind broken ridgelines, each one knowing they were minutes from being overrun. Sergeant David Klein, the squad leader, held a cracked field radio, his knuckles white. Every frequency he tried returned static. Any station, this is Alpha Tango 3. We're taking heavy fire, requesting immediate air support. Anyone, please respond. Static, no drones, no eyes in the sky, no hope, until a low, unfamiliar growl rolled over the valley. Not thunder, not artillery, something deeper, something closer. And then, a voice, clear, calm, female. Alpha Tango 3, this is Valkyrie 7, I see you. Hold your ground. Klein froze. Say again? But she was already overhead. The A-10 didn't scream through the sky like a jet. It stalked, it hunted. It moved with intent just above the treetops, riding the fog like a ghost made of steel and fury. In the command center, Colonel Kellerman stood frozen, gripping the edge of the table as the voice echoed from the speakers. This is Base Command. Valkyrie 7, return immediately. You are not cleared for this operation. His voice was sharp, cold, controlled. But inside, he was afraid. Because this woman, whoever she was, had just taken control of a battlefield he had already written off. She responded, not with defiance, but with something more dangerous, conviction. Colonel, I waited once. They didn't survive long enough to thank me. I won't make that mistake again. Inside the cockpit, Mira Halden didn't blink. This wasn't rebellion. This wasn't ego. This was muscle memory forged from regret. She adjusted her angle. Altitude, 300 feet. Speed, low and steady. Target, 3 concealed artillery nests, triangulated around Alpha Tango 3. There was no GPS lock, no laser guidance, no drones feeding her coordinates. Just her eyes, and the ghosts of those she hadn't saved. Going visual. I've got this. In the ravine, Sergeant Klein heard the sound first, a buzzsaw roar slicing through the sky. He looked up. That's a warthog. Then, Berta! The sound was deafening, but familiar to anyone who'd ever served near one. 3 blasts of earth and fire lit up the ridge like lightning bolts tearing into the dirt. Then silence. No more incoming fire, no more shells, no more enemy movement. This is Alpha Tango 3, Klein said into the radio, voice trembling. Artillery neutralized. We're still alive. In the war room, comms officers stared in disbelief. A technician whispered, She flew a perfect strike, using visual targeting, in 0 visibility. Another officer shook his head slowly. Whoever she is, she's done this before, and she's done it when failure wasn't an option. Kellerman turned to the screen showing the fading radar trace of Valkyrie 7. Get her back, now. She's not responding, sir. Then reroute a fighter to escort. There's nothing in range. Kellerman's jaw clenched. So we've got a rogue pilot in unauthorized airspace? He stopped himself. Because part of him, the part that still had honor, knew. She wasn't rogue. She was necessary. In the A-10 cockpit, Mira didn't say another word. She didn't need to. The mission was done. 12 soldiers would go home. She banked gently, turning her aircraft toward the ridge to disappear as quietly as she came. And for the second time in her life, she arrived in time. The command center was silent, not from awe, though it lingered like smoke, but from confusion. No one knew what to do with what had just happened. 12 soldiers lived. The enemy artillery was gone. And yet the pilot responsible wasn't in any database, didn't appear on any current roster, and had flown without orders. Colonel Kellerman stood at the center of it all, his jaw tight. Valkyrie 7, he muttered. That call sign was retired. Who brought it back? Lieutenant Dyer, still seated at his terminal, hesitated. His fingers hovered over the keyboard like he was about to wake a ghost. Sir, the last time that designation was active was during Operation Echo Winter. That name made several senior officers lift their heads. Kellerman narrowed his eyes. Pull up the mission archive. Sir, Echo Winter files are sealed. Level 5 clearance required. I'm giving you verbal override. Access them now. Dyer obeyed. A moment later, the name appeared on screen in a faded debriefing log. Lieutenant Commander Mira Halden. Call sign Valkyrie. 7 status. Suspended. Unauthorized action. Mission outcome, 18 lives saved. The room fell into a stunned silence. Operation Echo Winter had been a mess. Everyone knew that. A mission launched into a supposedly light threat zone based on faulty satellite intel. But it turned out the area was bristling with advanced surface-to-air missiles and electronic warfare jammers. Radios died within minutes. GPS blacked out. Half the strike force was obliterated in the first wave. The survivors were scattered, disoriented, bleeding, and completely unreachable. Command issued an immediate stand-down. No further rescue operations were authorized. Too risky, too unpredictable. Acceptable losses, the report had said, but Mira Halden hadn't accepted that. Without orders, without backup, she took off in her A-10, relying solely on paper maps, memory, and her instincts. She flew low, dodging missiles and terrain alike, hunting for signs of life across 30 square miles of hostile territory. And she found them. One by one. Over the course of 8 hours, she made 17 separate runs, using her Warthog as a flying shield, drawing enemy fire away from extraction teams, marking LZs manually with smoke, coordinating with nothing but hand signals and raw experience. On the final run, her aircraft took heavy damage. Hydraulics gone, navigation system destroyed, right engine failing. She limped it back with sheer will, landing on a rural road outside the base, wheels barely holding. 18 soldiers survived, all because of her. But instead of medals, she got a hearing. Violation of direct orders. Unauthorized use of military equipment. Compromising official protocol. She was offered a choice. Sign a formal apology, take the reprimand, and return to duty. Or stand by her decision and be dismissed. She didn't even hesitate. I will not apologize for bringing people home alive. If that's grounds for dismissal, then I accept it. And that was it. They erased her, removed from active duty, struck her name from flight rosters, classified her actions to avoid setting a dangerous precedent. The files were sealed, the story buried. But ghosts don't stay buried forever. Kellerman stared at the old report in disbelief. 18 lives saved, solo, under fire, in total blackout conditions. And we kicked her out, he said bitterly. An older officer, one of the few who had survived Echo Winter, finally spoke up. Sir, she wasn't just the best pilot we had. She was the kind of person who only asked one question. Are they still alive? If the answer was yes, she flew. Another technician added, There's more, sir. Over the past 3 years, there have been 17 unexplained rescue operations, all in places where official command had deemed the missions too risky. The room went still again. You're saying she's still out there? Someone asked. Not officially, the technician replied, but every time someone gets left behind, someone hears her. She was never meant to be remembered, never meant to be honored. But you can't erase someone like Mira Halden, because people like her don't fly for medals. They fly for the ones still waiting on the ground. Colonel Nathan Kellerman stared at the tactical map. Red pins marked failed operations. Black lines traced where communication had collapsed. And over each one, a quiet circle was drawn in pencil, unofficial and unexplained. 17 of them. 17 missions declared unrecoverable. 17 sets of coordinates where command had decided it was too late, too dangerous, too complex. And yet, each one ended the same way. The impossible rescue happened anyway. Command wrote it off as coincidence, a fluke. Some suggested it was local militia, others whispered rogue operators or misattributed drone strikes. But Kellerman had seen enough war to know there's no such thing as 17 coincidences. Or the technician scrolled through the compiled data again. Locations, times, radio logs. Each incident happened within 4 hours of an official stand-down order being issued. He said, no aircraft were authorized, no drone activity, but witnesses on the ground reported air support, low, surgical, and fast. He turned the monitor, and in all cases, it was an A-10. Not listed, not assigned, no transponder signal, but the growl was unmistakable. So was the precision. You think it was her every time? Someone asked. No, Kellerman said flatly. I know it was. Mira Halden had been dismissed, yes, but she hadn't stopped flying. She didn't wait for protocol. She didn't care about rosters. She listened to the silence, to the frequency where someone said, there's no help coming. And when that silence fell, she filled it. The stories had started to spread among infantry units, among medics, among recon teams deep in blackout zones. They spoke of a plane that arrived with no warning, that roared through mountain passes and river valleys like a ghost, that struck with uncanny accuracy, then vanished before anyone could thank her. They called her the Warthog Whisper. Some just called her the pilot who never left. But a few knew her real name. They just didn't dare say it out loud. Colonel Kellerman stood before the operations board and made a decision. I want a new protocol in place. Sir? Not official, not on paper, just available. For what? He looked up. For when the system fails. For when we say, no one's coming. That's when someone like her should still hear the call. A murmur rippled through the room. You want a shadow channel? I want a chance, Kellerman replied, for the ones we'd otherwise abandon. They called it the unwritten channel, a frequency that wasn't logged, a line that wasn't monitored by command. It wasn't broadcast publicly, it wasn't taught in training, but the right people knew. And when you whispered into that quiet void, sometimes, she answered. 1 month later, a recon unit went dark during a border op. Hostiles moved in fast. The evac bird never made it. The extraction was marked failed, except minutes before sunrise, air support arrived. An A-10, low, silent, alone. 3 quick strafing runs. All targets neutralized. No friendly fire, no comms. After the last pass, it disappeared into the morning haze. The squad survived. When debriefed, the team leader simply said, we didn't call her, but I think she was already listening. Back at base, Hangar 7 had become something of a legend. No name on the roster, no maintenance logs, and yet the A-10 inside was always pristine, polished, combat ready. No one saw who serviced it, but tools were always clean, ammunition rotated, fuel topped off. Sometimes pilots walking by late at night would hear soft footsteps, or the sound of a radio being tuned. Some dismissed it as imagination. Others just smiled and said, she's making sure it's ready for when we stop listening again. Because the truth was, Mira Halden didn't fly for rank, or orders, or medals. She flew for the ones who still breathed, the ones who still crawled, the ones who hadn't yet given up. She flew because silence should never be an answer, and in the cracks of a system built on protocol, someone had to make room for purpose. It was just after dawn when the call came in, not from radar, not from the tower, from a groundskeeper. Sir, there's an A-10 on the auxiliary strip. No flight plan, no transponder, no one saw it land. Colonel Kellerman was already grabbing his coat. By the time he arrived, the fog hadn't lifted. The air was still heavy with silence, the kind that made boots echo against tarmac. And there it was, the A-10, gray, weathered, familiar, like a memory etched in steel, not parked, resting. The engines were cooling, the canopy half open, and there, sitting in the pilot seat, was no one. No flight suit, no helmet, just a single piece of paper. Kellerman climbed the ladder and leaned into the cockpit. He read the words once, then again. I don't ask to be thanked. I just need to know they're alive. He didn't say a word. Not to the MPs standing nearby, not to the mechanics waiting for orders, not even to the base commander now walking up beside him. He just stepped back and looked at the jet. The paint was chipped, but every panel had been touched with care. The ammo bays were precisely loaded, less by regulation, more by intuition. This wasn't standard maintenance. This was devotion. A technician approached, squinting at the modifications. Sir, this aircraft's been heavily customized. Reinforced plating, manually upgraded targeting systems. There's wiring back here that predates our current tech. And yet it all functions better than our fleet. Kellerman nodded once. Don't touch a bolt on it, just move it. To where, sir? He turned, eyes steady. Hangar 7. From now on, it stays there. By noon, every pilot on base had heard. The A-10 in Hangar 7. The Ghost Jet. The Rogue Bird. The reason Alpha Tango 3 was still alive. Some walked past slowly, silent. Some stopped to study it like a relic. Others just stood in awe, staring at the words someone had engraved onto a metal plaque now mounted beside the hangar doors. Valkyrie 7. She arrives before orders. It wasn't a decoration, it was a reminder. New pilots asked about her. Was she real? Did she really save all those people? And the veterans would simply say, she never waited for clearance, just for a reason. In the following months, base personnel noticed strange things. The A-10 never appeared on the daily maintenance logs, yet its systems were always checked. Fuel gauges were full, avionics recalibrated, hydraulic seals replaced with parts that no one had requisitioned. Late-night patrols claimed they saw movement in the hangar, a shadow, a figure, a flicker of motion through the misted glass. No one ever confirmed it. No one ever stopped it either. One young mechanic was bold enough to slip a question to Kellerman one day. Sir, should we report the unauthorized access to Hangar 7? Kellerman didn't even look up. No, we protect the asset. Let her come and go. But sir, she's not on the roster. Neither is Hope, he said, but we still believe in it. And so the A-10 stayed. And so did the legend. Every time a mission felt impossible, every time the radio stayed silent just a second too long, someone in the field whispered, maybe Valkyrie's still listening. And in Hangar 7, the lights would sometimes flicker on in the middle of the night. Someone would file no flight plan, no request, no acknowledgement. But when soldiers screamed into broken comms, and command said, we can't, she would. Because Mira Halden didn't need the world's permission to do the right thing. Just a reason. And when that reason was 12 voices gasping through static, she never hesitated. She just flew. Sometimes the heroes we remember aren't the ones who followed every order. They're the ones who had the courage to act when silence would have been easier. Valkyrie 7, Mira Halden, was never officially celebrated. No medals pinned on her chest, no headlines. Yet her story carries a message we often forget in today's world. The right thing is rarely the easy thing. In our modern lives, we all face moments where protocol or rules tell us to look away, to stay quiet, to wait for someone else to take the lead. Maybe it's standing up for a coworker, defending someone who's being mistreated, or simply choosing kindness over convenience. We aren't flying A-10s through storms, but we all have battlegrounds, sometimes in our own families, communities, or workplaces. Mira's story reminds us of 3 timeless lessons. First, you don't need permission to do good. Waiting for approval can cost lives or moments that truly matter. Second, legacy is built not on recognition, but on actions that leave others better than before. Mira's name isn't in any official book, but the soldiers she saved will never forget her. Third, silence is not always loyalty. Sometimes doing what's right means breaking the mold, even if it means standing alone. And maybe that's what makes someone unforgettable. But what about you? If you were in Mira's place, would you have risked everything to save those lives? Do we, as a society, value the quiet heroes enough, the ones who don't ask for applause, but simply do what needs to be done? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe modern life still has Valkyrie 7s, people who work silently behind the scenes? Have you ever seen someone break the rules for the greater good? Or do you think rules should always come first no matter what? Your perspective matters, and these kinds of discussions are why this channel exists. To remind us of the stories that still hold power today. If this story moved you or reminded you of someone you admire, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that quiet heroism still exists. Every story we tell is for people like you, people who still believe courage, honor, and humanity aren't old-fashioned ideas, but values worth protecting. Thank you truly for spending this time with me today. Whether you're young or young at heart, these lessons are for all of us. Because life isn't about the titles we hold, but the lives we touch along the way.